Boy, remember the rock star Democrat here in Pennsylvania? She was destined for stardom. There was no bigger a star than Kathleen Kane. Remember her? Former Pennsylvania Attorney General Kathleen Kane. Jailed Friday. Again. This is her second trip to jail, mind you. This time for violating probation on a perjury conviction when she was popped for a DUI last month. Turning herself in Friday morning after Montgomery County Judge Wendy Alloy issued a warrant for her arrest. The judge previously sentenced Kane to prison after presiding over the 2016 perjury case that cut short Kane's meteoric political career. Things never change with Democrats. She just wasn't particularly good at being corrupt. Josh Shapiro's very good at being corrupt. And isn't it interesting it all comes out of Montgomery County? It's where Joe Gale lives. He's a county commissioner there. He's running for governor of Pennsylvania. I'm sure probably has a memory or two of Kathleen Kane. Good morning, Joe Gale.
Good morning, Chris. Thanks for having me on your program.
How about this lady? Back to prison again. Remember she was supposed to be the meteoric rising star of the Democrat Party.
Yeah, what a disgrace. You're supposed to be the chief of law enforcement, and then you end up in the Montgomery County Correctional Facility multiple times. So obviously she's not learning her lesson. I always say all roads lead through Montgomery County, and you see that certainly with the 2022 election here.
Yeah, and now the current Attorney General, also from Montgomery County, he's very under the radar right now, Joe Gale. You're running as a Republican who would ultimately get the nomination to challenge him. He's, I'm sure, amassing tons and tons and tons of money while not having to speak much at all.
Yeah, well, the Democrat nominee that will be the governor nominee for the Democrat side is current Democrat Attorney General Josh Shapiro, who's a former Democrat Montgomery County commissioner. I used to serve on the board with him. And it's interesting, Chris, all moves in Pennsylvania politics revolves totally around Josh Shapiro, who has a long-standing, warm, fuzzy, cozy relationship with Republican Party bosses. But first, let me just give you the evidence of how politics revolves totally around protecting and propping up Democrat Attorney General Josh Shapiro. Shapiro's running uncontested in the Democrat primary on May 17th for an open gubernatorial seat. Tom Wolf is termed out. So you think there'd be more interest amongst Democrats around the state to run for that open seat. But it's only Josh Shapiro. He brokers all the deals to clear the path in the primary, and then he's hoping for a weak Republican where he'll coast through in November. And there's a lot of bad Republican Party bosses and insiders that want Shapiro to win. And I'll give you two quick examples. When I beat the Montgomery County GOP and my first big upset for Montgomery County Commissioner, where I beat the GOP establishment, the chair of the county GOP at that time was a state representative named Mike Verb. And one of the first things Shapiro did when he was elected Attorney General was he hired Mike Verb in the Attorney General's department with a six-figure salary job that never existed before. So your listeners are probably wondering, why would the Democrat Attorney General create a job for the Montgomery County GOP party boss? It's establishment collusion. And another example is a former disgraced chairman of the Pennsylvania Republican Party. That's a guy named Val DeGiorgio, who had to resign because of a very embarrassing scandal in 2019 as chairman of the Pennsylvania GOP. Well, his wife is the former Montgomery County Commerce Director, hired by Shapiro when Shapiro was county commissioner. So again, you ask the listeners, why is the Democrat county commissioner, Josh Shapiro, hiring the Pennsylvania Republican Party chairman's wife? It's establishment collusion. And DeGiorgio and Shapiro were both partners at the same law firm. And why these people are in politics is not because they love the Bible, the Constitution, family values. This DeGiorgio fella clearly did not appreciate family values because of his scandal. They're in it for power and wealth, to get rich off our tax dollars. And these type of corrupt Republican Party bosses and insiders would actually like to see Shapiro, a Democrat, win the governorship, because then they can rake it in to have a bigger payday with all those state contracts. And they know that I'm the only Republican that can actually beat Josh Shapiro in a general election, because I have the geographic advantage of coming from Shapiro's home turf. We were both Montgomery County commissioners together. I'm a lifelong Montgomery County resident, now a two-term county commissioner, in Shapiro's backyard. And I developed a groundswell of support that's not only the conservative base, but tremendous appeal to independents that like that message I have to offer, where I'm not afraid to speak about the flaws and effectiveness and corruption of the Republican Party. And I'm working very hard in this campaign for governor because I would hate to see a squandered opportunity in 2022. After 2 years of draconian lockdowns, shutdowns, mandates, there's clearly an appetite to change course in Pennsylvania. But I have to be the nominee on the Republican ticket to win in the general election. And that's what I'm working towards. And you had one of my opponents on Friday, Doug Mail-in Mastrano, and you talked a lot about mail-in voting. And I'd like to have the opportunity to talk about some of the things he said related to Act 77 as well.
Of course, I would just say to you, Joe Gale, and Joe Gale is running as a Republican from Montgomery County on the ticket May 17th, joegale.com, the website. I would just circle back to add on before we get into that. Tom Wolf seems uniquely bad at politics. I mean, yes, he's a partisan, and yes, he's a hyper-progressive, and I believe all of that, but he's not good at it. Josh Shapiro's quite gifted at it, and so I think you're right, just instinctively, that there's a lot of people inside Republican ranks in Pennsylvania who like him personally and would like to work with him and make him look good. And I could see a Josh Shapiro being aided by Republican leadership to look like a real hero, whereas Tom Wolf was just uniquely bad politically. Do you think that's a fair assessment?
Tom Wolf had personal funding where he could self-fund a campaign, saturate the television, and he was able to win governor. Josh Shapiro is a very skilled insider politician where he brokers deals. He both sides of the aisle, Democrats and Republicans alike. He knows how to grease deals and get things done, including clearing a primary path. So to give you an idea, John Fetterman is the current Democrat lieutenant governor. He's not running for governor, moving from lieutenant governor to governor. He's running for United States Senate because Josh Shapiro doesn't want to face off another Democrat in a primary like John Fetterman, who has the ability to fire up the liberal base. So he's very skilled at being an inside politician. My skill set is being a retail politician, where at unprecedented levels, I go to people directly, as you know, through my Cup of Joes, my meet and greets, these coffee clatches. I've had over 1,000 of them. And that's what I believe is important to have. So you're right. Shapiro's skilled, but he's skilled at being an insider politician.
You took issue. I know we spoke with your brother, who's also on the ballot, May 17th. He's running for Senate, and he picked up on something Mastriano said to me during a Facebook Live. I pressed Mastriano a couple of times now on whether he regrets his vote for Act 77, and on both occasions, I don't want to put words in his mouth. He didn't like the phrasing of the word regret, but he definitely said that what he voted for was not what it became. And that he wouldn't take back the vote anyway. He just says that it became something else altogether. So you wanted to address that?
Yes, that's what he always says, and I'd like to address that. So in a nutshell, Act 77 is 50 days of no excuse mail-in voting. That's the longest vote-by-mail period of time in the nation. So that's what Act 77 is, and he does not regret voting for that. And Act 77 is the single reason why Donald Trump is not president of the United States. Act 77 gave us 2.7 mail-in ballots in 2020, compared to 220,000 absentee ballots in 2016. And out of that 2.7 million mail-in ballots in 2020, about 80% of those went for Biden. So clearly that's what took place here in Pennsylvania. Now, it was also passed unconstitutionally. And I believe that's really a scandal. And back in February, the Pennsylvania Commonwealth Court had a ruling declaring that Act 77 was passed unconstitutionally because they didn't follow the proper process. It had to pass 2 legislative sessions. Act 77 only passed 1. Required a voter referendum on the ballot where the voters decide whether or not they support this amendment. That never took place. And now that's being challenged to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, the ruling from the Commonwealth Court. But he likes to divert the blame to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. He says Act 77 was not the original bill that I voted on. It was hijacked and changed. So I'm going to tell you what they changed. They allowed for mail-in ballots that are postmarked by Election Day but arrive after Election Day to be counted. Now, I disagree with that. I think there's one Election Day, and it should end on Election Day. But the Supreme Court put in some provisions where as long as a mail-in ballot, which, again, we didn't have mail-in ballots before Act 77, is postmarked on Election Day, it can still arrive after the fact, and it can still be counted. So that number of ballots in 2020 was 4,600 compared to the 2.7 million mail-in ballots that they had 50 days to collect leading up to Election Day. So he wants to say, look over here at the 4,600, not at the 2.7 million where the blood's on my hands. And the people need to know the truth about this. And I say it constantly for now over 2 years. If any legislator voted for Act 77, which was every single Republican state senator and every Republican state rep except two of them, should be disqualified from holding any office, let alone being promoted to a higher office. And if the Republican primary voters of Pennsylvania nominate someone such as Doug Malin Mastriano as our Republican nominee for governor, the issue of Act 77 goes away. It's going to be swept under the carpet because Mastriano's other tactic of diversion is he wrote legislation to repeal Act 77. But he knows that Governor Wolf will never sign off on repealing it. He'll veto it. Wolf says that every day. And to be honest, there is absolutely no appetite in the state legislature to repeal Act 77, where the Republicans hold the majority and unanimously passed it because they love the fact that straight ticket voting's gone and the removal of straight Democrat benefits their down ballot races. Because It's been proven that in the masses, Democrat voters are less likely to vote all the way down ballot for every individual candidate, but they will do straight Democrat. And as long as their seats are safer seats, that's all they care about. And the Republicans don't want this gone. And if we nominate someone that voted for it, the issue goes away. And that's why it's very important that I win this nomination, because I'm going to hold those Republicans accountable to repeal it and have true election reform.
I don't know that I've asked you this. Donald Trump issued a statement on this gubernatorial race, and there was only one name that he called out, and it was Bill McSwain, actually. And he said unequivocally that of all of you in this field, Bill McSwain is the one Republicans should absolutely not vote for. Do you have an opinion there?
Yeah, well, I think everybody should vote for Joe Gale. But yeah, look, this is the problem, Chris. The 2020 election obviously is not up to par. We all know that the guy that never left the basement, there's no way he received more votes than any candidate in the history of the country running for president. There's no logic on that. And that no one denies that. But the blood is on the hands of the Republicans. And guys like Bill McSwain, who was serving as a U.S. attorney in the Southeast District of Pennsylvania, cannot go after his own party. Because all the other guys, and again, this is what separates the Gale brothers from all the other crowded field of candidates. We are not controlled by the GOP establishment swamp, and we never have been. And that gives us the freedom and independence to talk about the flaws and corruption of our own party. The other guys simply can't do that. So McSwain was reluctant to prosecute election fraud or anything related to Act 77 because then he's going after his own party. And if you listen to these other candidates, they'll tell you, I'm against mail-in voting, we got to fix this. But they never once say the Republicans passed it. I'm the only one that does it. And if it weren't for me talking about Act 77, this wouldn't even be an issue. Again, it'd be swept under the carpet. But the thing with Bill McSwain is, Chris, he has no path to victory. He's from Chester County. You have Joe Gale from Montgomery County, which neighbors Chester. You have Dave White from Delaware County, which neighbors Chester. And for that reason, Bill McSwain can't win. He can't build a base of support that's enough to win the nomination. Same thing with Dave White. Dave White's spending a lot of money on television commercials. He cannot win because he's chopped off in the Southeast by a crowded field with McSwain, Gale. Where I'm different is I have a loyal base of support because I'm in their living rooms every day, and it's unwavering. They stick with the Gale brothers through and through. These other guys can't get a path to victory. Now, where Mastriano's is a problem is he has a loyal following statewide, but But unfortunately, it's by people that are fooled by him. He's not all that he claims to be. He he does all these stunts for attention. He got on an airplane and flew to Maricopa County, Arizona, to observe an audit, and it was nothing for no purpose except to get publicity to look like he's trying to do something to restore election integrity when he's actually the problem. So nothing comes of it. And if we nominate him or any other Republican, they're not going to hold the Republican legislature and the Pennsylvania State House and State Senate accountable to actually repeal it and have true election reform. And that's the stakes with this election. And again, I'm the only one that can beat Josh Shapiro in a general election. And there's many political hacks that have analyzed the Joe Gale races in the past. And they can't figure out how this staunch, pro-life, social conservative exists in the Philadelphia suburbs. And I exist because I have tremendous appeal to independents. So I have the right ingredients with the right brand from the right location to beat Shapiro. And you have to remember that because I'm critical of the Republican Party, that's exactly why people vote for me. They've had enough of the Arlen Specters. They've had enough of the Pat Toomeys, Tom Ridge, who actually endorsed Joe Biden last year. And then the last Republican governor we had, who was so bad, he was unable to get reelected, and that's how he ended up with Tom Wolf, and that was Tom Corbett, because the legacy of the Corbett administration was giving Pennsylvania the highest gas tax in the whole entire nation, the Corbett gas tax, Act 89. So people are looking for young blood in the conservative movement that's uncontrolled, and that gives them the ability to hold accountable their own side, which in this case would be a majority in the state legislature, and actually deliver results. And that's what the Gale brother campaign is all about. And we're a serious Gale force in Pennsylvania politics, because in the last week alone, I've received 3 polls directly on my phone, and it says in the Republican primary for governor, who are you likely to vote for? And it lists 8 names, and there's 9 candidates. And the one name that's excluded is Joe Gale. And there's a reason why Joe Gale doesn't appear on those polls. They're worried. I'm a 2-term county commissioner in a county that's larger than 5 states in population. It's larger than a congressional district. It's larger than what Lou Barletta represented in Washington. And at unprecedented levels, over 1,000 Cup of Joes in the living rooms with actual Republican primary voters. So if you add all that together, we would poll very high, and particularly in a crowded field where you need less votes to win the nomination. This isn't a two-way race where you need 50% plus one. You simply need to be the top vote getter in a crowded 9-person field. So we are a threat, and I think that speaks volumes. And the reason why I'm excluded in polling is they do not want me on a debate stage. They had a debate last Wednesday by ABC where they put qualifiers, and one of the qualifiers was polling at a certain level. Well, it's very hard to meet that qualification when you're excluded from the polls. Yep. So we are a real threat. We have a very good chance of winning this primary, and I would be honored for your listeners to check out my website, joegale.com. They can learn more information about Act 77 and other issues, but they have to know that blood is on the hands of Republicans, and we must hold them accountable, and we have the opportunity to do that in the primary on May 17th.
JoeGale.com is his website, at Vote Joe Gale PA on Twitter, at Vote Joe Gale PA on Twitter, JoeGale.com. Joe, good luck if we don't speak before May 17th. Thanks for coming on today.
Thanks. And Chris, just real quickly, I'd also like to mention there's a recent development with the lieutenant governor candidate, Teddy Daniels, that's also all over the news. He was evicted from his home, has a protection from abuse order against his wife because he threatened violence on her and their 4-year-old son and apparently their dog that she alleges. So now that's just happened over the course of this week, and that's Doug Malin Mastriano's running mate for lieutenant governor, which is a separate elected office in the primary. But again, it shows you Mastriano's poor judgment, and now that's a ball and chain going in the general election. And Shapiro's hoping for the dream team to face off in November of Mastriano and Daniels, because they're full of baggage and they're unelectable in the general election. So I really encourage your listeners during this final couple weeks to pay attention and make sure they get the decision right, to get a trusted conservative that has elected ability and will deliver results. And I believe I fit that mold. And again, I'm grateful for this opportunity, Chris. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you, Joe. That's Joe Gale at 853-610-850-0990.